So welcome everyone to our research conference, and this morning or this afternoon, wherever you may be, what time it is, welcome to our session on inclusive pedagogy, online faculty development, and effective strategies. And Nadia and Jenny, I will let you go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Jim. And welcome everyone to our presentation. We are very appreciative of your presence here today. Let me share the slides with you. Just a note here that we have updated the slides last minute, so an updated version will be posted later. And please, as usual, we see what's happening with Zoom. Let me know if you are able to see my slides.
Not yet. Have you started to share your screen?
Yeah, but it seems that something went wrong. Okay. How about that?
Yep.
Perfect. And you're able to see now?
We're seeing your notes screen.
Oops,
Side.
no, that one. So just let me. Can you see now the slides? Yep. Perfect. Thank you. There's no presentation without any issue with Zoom or slide sharing. Thank you for your patience. Our presentation today will be about inclusive pedagogy online, faculty development, and effective strategies that come from a workshop and a research study that we are currently conducting. Let me introduce the members of our team first. We have Katherine McAlvadge, our Assistant Director of Course Development and Training at Ecampus, and also a graduate school faculty. I am Nadia Jaramillo Cherrez, Instructional Design Specialist, and we also have 2 collaborators.
Hi all, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jen Meyers, and I'm a faculty member at Wells College, but formerly at Oregon State University, where I taught sustainability courses and was a member of this research team through the Ecampus research unit. And then I'm also going to introduce Deanna Lloyd, who couldn't be here today with us live, who's also an instructor in horticulture and sustainability at Oregon State.
Thank you, Jen. Our 2 colleagues, Katherine McAlvadge and Deanna Lloyd, are unable to join us live, but they recorded a presentation about certain aspects of our project that we would like to share with you. Before we actually start with our presentation, we would like to hear more about you so we can connect better and tailor the questions, answers in context of what we will share in relation to your own context. In the chat, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about what is your role at your institution, whether you are a faculty member, whether you work in academic technology support, whether you are an instructional designer, learning designer, or any other support that you provide to faculty. It's important to know who we have in the room so we can establish some points of connection as we navigate the different topics that we will present today. So we see that we have a variety of roles in our audience today. That's wonderful. Coordinators too, leadership teams, faculty. So I think that what we will share today will resonate at different levels, and we will be happy to also contextualize some of the findings that we will present today to your own context. And also we see IID instructional designers and coordinators of technologies. Thank you, we appreciate you sharing with us your role. The second question that we would like to ask you is, what does inclusive teaching online mean to you? Because this would also give us an idea of where understanding is in relation to inclusivity, and then how we relate our findings to those, and we establish some kind of conversations as we move through our presentation today. So we talk about engaging, welcoming every learner, intersectionality, which is very important, and we might add some points there as well. That students feel welcome, they're part of the course. There's intercultural awareness. That's a very interesting and important point as well. Regardless of the students' abilities or disabilities, we know that all students should be welcome. Engagement as well is important, personalization and differentiation. I think that there are fantastic ideas about how we conceptualize inclusive teaching online with a variety of overlapping aspects and identities that are important to consider when we design our learning experiences. Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. These are very, very helpful. Next, I'm going to share with you Katherine's presentation. She will walk us through the overview of our inclusive teaching online and the research project that comes with it. So let me stop sharing my slides and I will share her video. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Katherine. I'm sorry that I can't join you synchronously today, but I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to help my colleagues share about our research project. Oregon State is a QM subscriber, so like many or all of you, we offer professional development to our faculty in the QM standards. We introduce the standards in our signature online course development workshop, and many of our faculty also go on to take APP QMR or additional QM workshops. All of our online courses must meet the eCampus essentials as they are being designed to, and those are a subset of the QM rubric standards that we are emphasizing as an internal baseline. In the past few years, we've started emphasizing the relationship between evidence-based course design approaches on the one hand and evidence-based facilitation practices on the other. And we have developed online teaching principles to supplement our eCampus essentials design standards. Our inclusive teaching workshop is a good example of this relationship. There are key elements of inclusive teaching that are definitely embodied in the QM rubric, but even a QM certified course might not be inclusive in its delivery if the instructor wasn't present or didn't engage with students, for example. That said, on this slide, we've outlined the intersection between QM standards and inclusive teaching approaches that we use in our workshop, noting in parentheses the specific standards or standards we're referencing. The first item here, for instance, is linked to the QM standard about clearly stating course policies so that students know what to expect. And we build on that in our workshop to help faculty ensure that those clearly stated policies are equitable and inclusive. In the next few minutes, you'll hear more about our workshop content and how we help faculty work through these approaches. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to share a high-level view of our research project. We began with a survey to all eCampus faculty in December 2019, which helped us to understand how much value faculty place on various inclusive teaching approaches and how much confidence they have in employing those approaches. Responses were anonymous. Those survey results provided us valuable insight for what content should be included in a workshop on this content and topic, and confirmed our impression we really needed a workshop specific about inclusive teaching approaches in asynchronous online courses. All eCampus faculty were then invited to begin participating in our workshop called Inclusive Teaching Online, or ITO. In this workshop, we have curated evidence-based practices that have been shown to work online, and we've adapted other strategies that have not yet been studied in depth in the online context. We have had 4 faculty cohorts so far. Faculty are invited to participate in our research study at the beginning of the workshop, but can participate fully without taking part in the study as well. Of our consenting faculty participants, we're tracking 2 groups during and after the workshop. First, all of our consenting research participants, And second, consenting research participants who are faculty in DPD courses. At Oregon State, our general education curriculum includes a category of courses called Difference, Power, and Discrimination, or DPD. All bachelor degree seeking students must take a DPD course. As you might imagine by the category name, these courses address institutionalized systems of inequity and privilege in the US, and they can be particularly challenging to teach asynchronously online. Finally, we have been collecting and are continuing to collect follow-up data from consenting research participants who completed the workshop 2 or more terms ago to learn about what strategies they've implemented and how they're working so far. We've had over 100 of our 1,100 online faculty complete our workshop to date, most of whom have also consented to participate in our research project. I just want to note that we're really pleased to have had that level of participation during COVID. Even that first cohort was wrapping up in March 2020. ITO is a 4-week workshop with 1 module per week. Module 1 and Module 2 provide many opportunities for self-reflection and building awareness. Modules 3 and 4 then cover specific evidence-based inclusive teaching strategies and ask faculty to start working toward possible applications. Here we've provided some additional information about topics and strategies that are covered in the first 2 modules. As we get started, faculty explore impacts of their own identities on their online teaching and reflect on how and where they present themselves to their students. Then they are introduced to different cultural constructs of teaching and learning that instructors and students bring into classrooms, and how online students specifically encounter barriers to their success. We also highlight the principles of inclusive excellence from the Association of American Colleges and Universities. In Module 3, we cover syllabus statements about a faculty's personal philosophy about diversity and inclusion that will help them set the tone for their course. We talk about equitable course policies, adding supplemental or refresher material to support student review and activate prior knowledge, how and when to refer students to OSU resources, midterm outreach to students who may be disengaged or struggling, transparent prompts, and actionable feedback. There's a lot of content and possibilities for approaches in that module. And then finally, in Module 4, we focus entirely on facilitating asynchronous online discussions, since we know this is a particularly acute challenge for eCampus faculty. We first discussed distinguishing between different purposes for using discussion boards and how to align discussion participation requirements and grading with those purposes. We also adapted a cross-cultural communication framework for use in the online threaded discussion format. And faculty try this framework out in a case study where we have a problematic student post, faculty have to respond, and then we talk together about how their different approaches worked. The workshop is bookended by a pre and post survey, which illuminate how participants' ideas about and confidence in inclusive teaching have changed. Faculty also complete an action plan where they articulate what plans they have for implementing inclusive teaching strategies online and how they measure efficacy. As mentioned earlier, we've started receiving follow-up survey data as well, where faculty report on what they have actually done and how it has worked out. Research participants consented to us using these assessments anonymously as we report out, so Nadia will talk more about our findings to date.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we work through the logistics of the presentation. And let me resume the presentation now. And let's see if that will work.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So what happens with a research project? We are in the earliest stages of analyzing the data, and what we will present today is preliminary results of our follow-up survey that we are still collecting some of the data. One aspect that we explore in the research is the ways in which our instructors who participated in the workshop implemented these inclusive teaching practices. As Katherine mentioned, At the end of the workshop, our instructors developed an action plan that described the most useful tools and strategies, as well as their intentions to put these strategies into action the next time that they teach their course or courses. In the follow-up survey, what we asked instructors is to report on their action plans that could include their experiences and also the actual implementation of tools and strategies. We also asked the instructors to report how they feel about the strategies, whether they work, how they work, or if they did not work. The table on the screen presents the data from 32 participants that have responded to the follow-up survey so far. So please bear with me here that these are not definite results yet. In the survey, we asked 2 questions in relation to the action plan that could give us some evidence of what faculty members are thinking for the implementation, what they are considering important as they are planning to have an inclusive teaching practice. On the left side of the screen, you will see listed all the strategies and few excerpts of the answers that faculty provided to the first question. What strategies have you considered implementing? The results show 5 strategies that and tools that the faculty intended or had in mind to implement when they teach. So based on the results, approximately a third of our instructors reported developing a syllabus statement that describes their inclusive practices. For instance, the use of different language or different tone. Other instructors reported in their statements that they welcome the students' diverse perspectives, how they would address issues of respect and inclusivity, adding land acknowledgement, and so forth. Other instructors reported making adjustments to the course curriculum, which include content from diverse authors and sources and perspectives. Other faculty reported planning to adopt equitable course policies, such as flexibility of assignments or the format of assignments. Another strategy included creating more transparent prompts for assignments, such as including clear purposes, making connections to the learning outcomes, very clear instructions of what the expectations are for students to complete the assignment according to those expectations. Adopting, the other strategy was adopting techniques to facilitate discussions that was also listed in the plan. So this will support students better and would also give faculty a way to establish connection with the students as they move on in the course, in the different discussions that they have. For the second question that we asked about what strategies have you implemented, now we see very similar results, but we see that the priorities have changed. About a third of our instructors mentioned implementing flexible policies, particularly in relation to flexible due dates for submission of assignments. Based on what faculty have shared, it seems that faculty accommodate students' different life circumstances. So that's what the flexibility comes for, allowing students to submit at a late time. They also consider students' feedback so they can make some adjustments on the go to certain aspects of the course. Some other faculty indicated implementing strategies for discussions, such as documenting the student-instructor interaction. So they open opportunities for all the students to have that contact with the instructor, to be able to communicate with the instructor, see these perspectives, and also get some feedback. Other instructors did add a syllabus statement for inclusive practices that set the tone of the course, and also providing students with some wording that they will support the different identities that the students have, whether they come from different backgrounds, languages, etc. Changes to the curriculum was also implemented, first by recognizing that the sources, the content that faculty provide in the courses are not comprehensive, that there may be other perspectives, other resources that could be available that bring different flavors to the content of the course. And the last strategy relates to writing more transparent prompts in the activities and assignments, which can help students navigate better what they need to do in those assignments and avoid getting confused or submitting other kind of expectations there. There are other strategies too that faculty share with us, including timely feedback, student surveys, improved interaction. However, the strategies that we are sharing here are the ones that resonated the most with our instructors. Now, what do we make out of all this data so far? Overall, the results show that all the intended plans to integrate inclusive strategies and tools were implemented in the course the faculty taught, but in varying and different degrees. 3 of the strategies with more emphasis in the intended plan included the inclusion of a syllabus statement, equitable course policies, such as adding flexibility, and how to facilitate discussions to support and connect with the students. However, the strategy that resonates the most is adding a syllabus statement, which makes sense because the syllabus statement, to some extent, is easy to create. Is it tangible? Is visible? You can share that with the students. And it's a document where you basically write the ideas there and the students can read or they can look at. But when we look at it, results in the second question, we observe that the strategy the faculty implemented the most was flexible policies, especially around due dates for assignment completion. And what we interpret is the faculty may recognize that our students have life outside of their classrooms or their classes, and that life circumstances can happen, and therefore faculty become more willing and acceptable to have some lenient deadlines, more flexibility, so students are able to cope with the demands that they have in their life, as well as with the demands of the course. It seems for our faculty that flexibility is an important characteristic of inclusive design, but also inclusive teaching. The second strategy implemented is the discussion facilitation, where instructors more intentionally make efforts to connect with the students. So they value the importance of the relationship that needs to be built with every student in the class. And of course, that for bigger courses with large enrollment classes, that might be more complex. So there is still an intention from faculty to look at opportunities to connect with individual students or with the students at an individual level. And we know that this interaction with the students will help them feel more welcome, connected, and even satisfied with the learning experience. The syllabus statement is an interesting finding here, because as we saw in the first part, there's a plan. So we see that as important. But when we actually go into the implementation part, or when faculty are teaching the course, the syllabus statement is not enough. So that language, the wording, those phrases, those plans are not enough. So we need to make sure that those plans come into action at some point. So it appears that for a faculty, to create an inclusive environment means to add other alternatives, other strategies. However, the syllabus statement can be our starting point. We noticed that several faculty describe more inclusive language and tone in the syllabus, which can send a message to students that the class will be an environment where they can feel welcomed, supported, and most importantly, an environment where they feel that they belong. So we'll be sharing a few links about the resources that Katherine mentioned, and I will mention here about a study that was conducted on the tone of a syllabus statement. It's not necessarily related to inclusive practices, but what we notice is that tone is important when we craft syllabus. And finally, how do we connect the quality matters standards that we begin with, and Katherine mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, with the different topics that we cover in our workshop and to the results that we find so far? Equitable policies is clearly one of those areas. And as facilitators of the workshop, Katherine and I discussed with instructors the overall characteristics and demographics of and demographic information of our own student population. So we help develop in our instructors their awareness of who their students are and how they can connect with the students better in case the students need to reach for help. We also explore the different instructors' areas of contextual challenges that can impact the students when faculty implement these equitable practices. For example, looking at the structural barriers that may affect how students access to online education, but also to the resources in their own courses. During the workshop, we also model some equitable practices. We illustrate these to faculty so they can also see what is the benefit for students if they are able to connect with certain specific aspects of their identity. And we discuss with faculty what are the levels of comfort with sharing certain aspects of their identity, which we don't have to share everything, but there may be instances as they teach that are good options where faculty can share more about their own lives, their own situations, and they can connect with the students, and the students may feel that there's someone that has a similar experiences as they have or as they go through. The syllabus being a mechanism itself to communicate the details of the course is important. And as I mentioned in our results, the tone seems to be a point where we need to work more with faculty and understand what tone means when drafting the syllabus, as what the message is in terms of how faculty have the commitment to create an inclusive learning environment. In the workshop discussions, we realized that the syllabus statements that our faculty create to some extent consolidate their ideas, their teaching philosophies, their own approaches to what inclusivity means. But also we acknowledge that we need to move forward that. So there's something more that faculty could do when they are teaching, and that's what we're seeing all these other strategies. When we discuss with faculty the different barriers that the students may face in the class, diversifying the curriculum comes into the conversation, and is an element that can begin at the design level when instructional designers, for example, work with faculty and help them design their materials, with the textbooks, research articles, videos, etc. Where those materials come from as an important point to talk with faculty if they're open to consider inclusive strategies. And then finally, transparency in assignments is important because those two, that aspect also begins with the design level. What is exactly that students are expected to do, and then how faculty will scaffold that when they're actually teaching the course. During the workshop, we also discussed about creating clear description of the assignments, following the transparent assignment framework, where faculty will describe very clearly the purpose, what are the instructions, what is the evaluation or the grading criteria, and some faculty also add a set of resources for completing that assignment. So that's what we understand at this point about how faculty transition from making a plan of what inclusive teaching will be and how they're able to implement some of those strategies and how they are working for them. We hope that in the future we're able to share more of the results that we had. And then I will let Jen talk about and share more about specific examples that relate to the DPD program that we have at Oregon State. Thank you. And I will put the links in the chat.
Thanks so much, Nadia. I don't know, there were a couple of questions that came up as you were presenting. I don't know if you want to flag.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, just Dan, I wanted to ask the question about the details of the action plan. Was that sufficiently addressed, or would you like Nadia to speak more to that? If Dan is still.
Well, the action plan is, so faculty have go through the 4-week workshop, and the last assignment that faculty complete in that workshop is an action plan, where one of the questions of that action plan is to identify strategies that they want to implement the next time that they teach the course. And faculty could describe strategies that we have discussed in the workshop, or maybe some others that they are aware of, that they might thought about. So that's how the action plan comes into our research project. So we're using that assignment from the workshop for our research.
And then there was also a question about the disciplines of faculty involved in the training.
That's a great question. We have a variety of faculty from education, we have from languages, we have had faculty from engineering, from fishery studies, agriculture studies, a variety of instructors. And then demographic of our faculty.
Yeah.
The workshop that we offer is for the faculty that teach our online courses. Some of our faculty also teach campus courses, but the workshop is offered now only for the faculty that are involved in the distance courses that we design at eCampus. The workshop is on a voluntary basis, so faculty that are interested, they sign up for the workshop.
Yeah.
And then about sharing the action plan, I would love to, as part of our research, so we may be able to share some bits of that in more presentations or products of our research, articles or conferences. But at this point, I won't be able to, because that's one of the elements that we're still analyzing. But thank you. The questions are really great. Thank you.
Great. So if we could go back to slide 18, Nadia. Thank you so much. So as my colleagues have stressed, we found the quality matters standards and the design considerations to be an important foundation for inclusive pedagogy. Can we stay back on 19 for a second? I want to, thanks. So I'll just continue then. So as everyone, as Nadia and Katherine have stressed, we found the quality matters standards and design considerations to be a really important foundation for inclusive pedagogy. And And then thinking about what can we do in the facilitation of these courses to expand upon this framework. And so utilizing this framework allows us to ensure that our courses are meeting standards for accessibility, transparency, clarity of communication, and that really helps to set the tone for success for all students. And so, as Katherine noted earlier, the research project focused on the experiences of 2 faculty cohorts who have engaged in the Inclusive Teaching Online workshop. The data that Nadia presented reflect the experience of all the faculty that were enrolled in the workshop who consented to participate in the research study. And Deanna, Lloyd, and I are also conducting narrative interviews with a subset of faculty members who teach the difference, power, and discrimination courses that are part of the general education curriculum at Oregon State University, as Katherine explained. These courses are offered by faculty across the disciplinary spectrum, and they focus on themes of systemic inequity in the United States to meet these learning outcomes shared on this slide. So as you might imagine, the content of these courses allows ample opportunity for faculty to utilize the strategies for inclusive teaching online presented in the workshop, and often to use them as a springboard for deeper work explicitly addressing our positionalities and the power dynamics that influence the dynamics in the classroom. We're focusing on the experiences of DPD faculty in particular to assess the effectiveness of the training in addressing the needs of faculty who are facilitating dialogues around complicated and oftentimes sensitive topics in their courses. And also to shed light on faculty perceived barriers to doing the work well. I need you to go back, Nadia. We're still on slide, or we should be on slide 20 now. Thanks. So in addition to our roles on the research team, Deanna, Lloyd, and I have also taught difference, power, and discrimination courses online at Oregon State. And we are still in the process of doing the data analysis for the narrative component of this research. So we decided today to share some strategies from our own teaching to illuminate how these practices can be adopted in practice in the classroom. Let's see. We are utilizing the Quality Matters standards in ways to humanize our online classrooms, expose the power dynamics in the relationship between who shows up in the room as a student and who shows up in the room as the faculty member, and to help students engage in ways that build trust and allow them to take risks in our classroom discussions and rethink their own positionalities in the classroom. We'll look specifically at strategies we've employed to expand upon standards 1.8 and 5.4 in ways that complicate the suggestion of what it means to be professional in your instructor introduction and communication. And then look at opportunities we can further humanize ourselves in our interactions with students. And then I'll share an example that meets the goals of standards 5.2 and 6.2 for active learning and engagement. Thanks for bearing with us we've put together a complicated presentation here between all the pieces. And so I'm going to ask Nadia to stop sharing the presentation, and I'm going to share a recorded video from my colleague, Deanna Lloyd.
Hi all, this is Deanna and I teach an online class called Sustainability, Justice, and Engagement. And as Jen mentioned, it is designated as one of those difference, power, and discrimination general education courses. In it, we examine social constructs, systems of oppression, and do a lot of self-reflection on our privileges and biases as we explore how frontline communities are engaging in sustainability action. Thinking about QM's standard 1.8, it requires there to be a professional self-introduction by the instructor that is available online. This is an opportunity to introduce myself in a way that sets the tone for the course. Recognizing societal systems and our positionality within them is important in this class. So I modeled that right from the start by sharing aspects of my positionality and how that influences my lived experiences, privileges, and potential biases. For some people, sharing in that way may not be deemed professional, but it models for the students' self-reflection and helps shift power dynamics in the classroom. Students start off the course seeing that I, too, am a person who is engaging in the world in various ways and learning throughout. I'm not just a detached expert. I also use the introduction to articulate why this class centers voices from frontline and minoritized communities. So the introduction is not only an introduction, it is also a learning opportunity for students to begin thinking about the big ideas covered in class, and it is an example of vulnerability and reflection. As the course progresses, self-reflection and vulnerability and humility play a key role in the learning process. I emphasize to students that we are all fallible, but how we react to our mistakes and learn to be better is part of what can make us effective change agents. Recognizing my positionality as the instructor, I could just ask students to be vulnerable and share their reflections to various prompts, but that keeps all the power with me. Instead, I too expose my vulnerability and fallibility. Even here with you now, I'm pushing beyond my comfort zone by sharing this photo of me that I extracted from a class announcement video. This class video reflects on 2 different times when I made mistakes with my language around social justice issues, and then how I was called upon to be accountable for those mistakes. One in a very public way, and one in a more intimate and individual way. And then I disclosed to my students my internal feelings as I processed and considered how to respond. It has been powerful to see how students engaged and reacted to my vulnerability. As one student noted the last day of class, quote, "Hearing about your experiences felt authentic, supportive, and showed us it is possible to lead by example. Also, I felt hopeful in that I can learn from my mistakes and continue to grow and evolve," end quote. While my syllabus and assignments and assessment instructions articulate different ways I will be engaging with the learners, as required in Standard 5.2, both my introduction and fallibility videos are attempts to exemplify vulnerability and reflection, both of which I clearly ask from my students. These videos help move that requirement of clear communication from a one-way didactic exchange of information to a more democratic two-way form of sharing information and modeling learning and growth. This also connects with Standard 5.4 about clearly identifying learner interactions. Since assignments are either discussion-based or individual reflections, I clearly note when a submission will be viewed by the class or just by me. Students are all at different levels of understanding and comfort with this material, and they may share more openly in one setting versus another. So by identifying who will see their submission, it is not only clear communication, but also a form of scaffolding to students' various needs, experiences, and identities. And although being open has been a powerful tool for me, I recognize that my identity and privileges as an educated white woman influences how students perceive this expression of vulnerability. So, connecting to that idea of student perceptions, the center of this graphic lists a few of the different social identities that can influence the positionality of an instructor. Based on their identities, an instructor may experience different risks and benefits to modeling vulnerability in the classroom, such as lower or higher student evaluation scores, more or less pushback from students, or a questioning of credibility or bias. Not only has awareness of my positionality helped me critically consider when to be vulnerable in a way that is meaningful to most students, not all, and is relevant to the class, it has also helped me reflect on my course design and curriculum and interrogate whose perspectives are being shared through my materials, what knowledge is being validated, and what narratives are being communicated. I've also been intentional about decentering myself as the expert, as I strive to design courses that center around student knowledge and experience, so I act more as a facilitator rather than a conveyor of knowledge. This recognition of positionality is a key component of the Inclusive Teaching Online workshop. And as mentioned earlier, participants in the workshop are asked to reflect on their positionality and prompted to consider how much personal information they reveal to students. Some folks answered that they reveal a lot. Some express purposefully hiding aspects of their identity, and others haven't really thought about what personal information or identities are conveyed to students. Personal positionality is just one influence on barriers or opportunities to creating an inclusive classroom, and it influences how we see and experience the world, and thus how we design courses and interact with students. We just talked about instructor positionality, and of course, each of our students also have their own identities and positionality. These identities are influenced by and operate within larger institutional and societal systems, some of which are listed in the outer two rings on this graphic. As Katherine noted earlier, there are intersections between inclusive teaching approaches and QM standards. Considering Standard 1.4 and how it requires clearly stating course policies, I first consider how these different systems influence my students, what narratives and assumptions I may be making about them, and then I do my best to craft policies that are not only clearly stated as required by QM, but also equitable and inclusive. These are just a few of the ways I am using QM standards as a foundation to then integrate inclusive teaching strategies. Now back to Jen to share examples from her class.
All right, thank you. Can we go back to the presentation on slide 25, please, Nadia? Thanks. So briefly, in the time remaining, I'll share an example of a strategy I utilized working with eCampus instructional designers to utilize the course design and the technical elements of the course to engage students in active learning in a difference, power, and discrimination course. Building upon Quality Matter Standards 5.2 and 6.2. So I taught, we're still on, I'll tell you about it in advance, thanks Nadia. So I taught an online social sustainability course designed for difference, power, and discrimination designation. And one of our course modules addressed the history of the environmental movement in the United States and highlighted the contributions of environmental leaders from minoritized communities. And I worked with my instructional designer to design an assignment that allows students to collaborate in small groups to create the course content using a multimedia biographical timeline tool. And the assignment facilitates peer-to-peer learning, experiential learning, and offers students a creative way to demonstrate their understanding of the material. In addition to these goals, I worked with the eCampus instructional designer to actually use the assignment to illustrate themes of institutional bias, privilege, cognitive bias by simulating institutional discrimination in the assignment design using the features that are available through Canvas. All right, next slide. Thanks, Nadia. So this is an example of what the timeline looks like. And groups of 5 students were asked to create profiles of environmental leaders from minoritized communities. And what I did was I had the majority of the class required to submit a photo or a video representing the person that they profiled to work. And then I randomly chose one group and gave them a truncated version of the assignment instructions, and I asked the students in that group were restricted to text submission for their assignment, so there was no multimedia assignment available to them. And then at the end of the week, I had the students review the timeline, evaluate each other's work, and nominate their picks for the profile that best contributions for extra credit points. The evaluation criteria that we use include how well the team creatively demonstrated their individual's work. And so the following week, I explained that the assignment was designed with these built-in inequities, and we have a really rich and engaging conversation about the experience that allows the students to reflect on their cognitive biases, the assumptions that they made based on their positionality in which group they landed in the parameters of the assignment. And then I asked them to draw the parallels they found from participating in the experience with the systems of inequity that we're discussing as larger themes in the class. We also highlight the fact that over the course of the many terms that I've used this assignment in class, they often report that they look back, the students that are in the sections that do not include the instructions to include a photo, when they see the other students' work, they'll often self-report that they go back, they panic and go back and look to see if they made a mistake in reading the instructions and see if they missed something. And they make assumptions that other students just went above and beyond the assignment instructions. But no one has ever contacted me as a person in position of power in the classroom to see if I made a mistake. And so we expose those dynamics as well. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we wanted to open it up for a conversation, but we are at time. So I'd love to hear more from you all about your experiences of barriers that you're experiencing in terms of implementing inclusive teaching strategies and opportunities you see to implement this in your work. But I think maybe we could take a quick question or two if there are questions lingering.
Thank you, Jen, for sharing with us your example. And yeah, we are at the top of our time. We welcome questions if someone has questions. We will be posting the links that we mentioned in our presentation.
Thank you so much for everyone for attending.
Thank you very much. Yes, the
Thank you,
recordings. Yeah, the recordings will be available next week. So thank you for that.
Can I ask a quick question or share something?
Yeah, I'm going to need this room in 10 minutes. So you have.
It should just be quick. I guess I came into this particular session looking for strategies and ways that were new to my instructional design classes, designing courses for credit, asynchronous, instructor agnostic, fully online, that would bring in more voice and equity and just allow for deeper conversations. But what I'm hearing is really affirming is that the practices that we are currently doing to just be clear in our instructions, be meaningful in our instructions, I align the resources with the objectives and purpose and give meaningful feedback. Everything that you mentioned regarding back to the QM standards is already, without necessarily saying it directly, but already addressing inclusivity. Is that a fair summary?
Thank you, Kathy, for your comments.
Yeah.
I think that we start with the design. That's what Katherine mentioned at the beginning. And in our workshop, we bring other aspects that not necessarily we cover during the design phase, like instructor identity, what are the different barriers that students may face that don't come necessarily directly into the workings of the design. I think that Jen, you were going to say something else.
Yeah, similarly, I think we use that foundation as a springboard for thinking more deeply about how to expand on the practices that are set at the foundational level through the QM standards. Thank you, Kathy. Does that address your question?
Yeah, I'm hearing that foundation is there, and I appreciate the additional comments about expanding on that, in particular to the instructor positionality and how that impacts it, and And then recognizing that student positionality is going to have an impact as well. Just being knowledgeable about that as human beings is really good stuff. And the more we can communicate that way with our faculty and students and ourselves, the better, probably.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, I hate to cut off the conversation, but I'm gonna have to end this one and say thank you guys very much for the presentation and for everyone's attendance and questions. And good luck with the rest of the conference.
Thank you, everyone.
you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.